Hello everyone, I'm Catherine Dehoney, President and CEO of Chorus America. Welcome to this premiere of Alice at Home with Alice Parker. We know Alice as a composer, a conductor, a teacher, and a champion of the human voice. She is also a hero in the world of choral music. Tonight's documentary film illuminates her life and art through a series of intimate conversations with filmmaker Eduardo Montes-Bradley. As you'll see, the film was made before COVID changed our lives and how we work, especially as choral musicians. Chorus America also knows Alice Parker as a former member of our board of directors for almost 20 years. So I am very proud tonight to also announce that in conjunction with the premiere, Chorus America and Alice are establishing the Alice Parker Fund to support the composition and thoughtful presentation of choral music based in the traditions of Black and Latinx communities, which have so deeply inspired Alice's work. We've set a goal of $50,000 to endow this fund, and it will be used to generate an award to recognize Black and or Latinx composers and ensembles that respectfully and authentically present works incorporating these traditions. Join us in supporting Alice's legacy and this fund tonight by texting the word chorus, C-H-O-R-U-S, to 56512. You can also make a gift online by clicking the link that's in the description below the video here on YouTube. Immediately following the premiere, stick around for a talkback with Alice and Eduardo Montes-Bradley. And during the conversation, you'll be able to ask some questions in the chat box. So now, please enjoy Alice at Home with Alice Parker.
When was I born?
Yeah.
I was born in December in 1925 in Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. And the story goes that the nursemaid that my parents had hired, they dressed all in white with white over her head, and they posed her in the window of their apartment that looked out on the street holding the baby on Christmas Eve, and everybody around came to stand and watch and see. So that's the story of my birth.
Welcome, good friends, to the singing school.
So why do we sing?
Because we have to, because birds do. It's built into us. It's a fundamental part of our anatomy. Why do we not sing is the terrible question now. Oh, my father was a wonderful person, very outgoing, a salesman kind of person, very warm-hearted, cordial man with a big greeting, always a big smile and arms out kind of thing. They both were very church people. They'd grown up in churches and always sung, as people did. They sang much more, of course, communally and in families then, because people were just not used to having records and things like that. My father gave me wonderful advice I always thought should be at every conservatory. He said, if you want to be a composer, you go right ahead, follow it as far as you can. But just remember, nobody owes you a living. The world does not owe you a living. You've got to find a way to support yourself while you're doing that.
What is it?
But I've done very different things. I think maybe the best piece I've ever done is called Songs for Eve. Was a commission from our local concert series, chamber music, down in the church in Charlemont. And they would like it to a local poet, so I started looking around, and I had set some Archibald MacLeish before, and he's a neighbor, and I had met him. So I started looking at, I wrote him and asked if he had a suggestion, and he said, you might find something in Songs for Eve. And I was just fascinated because there were a variety of traditional styles of poetry, traditional rhyme schemes and things, each one very different. And it's a retelling of the first chapter of Genesis, but his Eve is the mother of us all. She's the truly liberated woman. Adam kind of stands by. It's very Christian, but she never mentions Christ. She doesn't even mention God particularly. He doesn't even mention God. And he really caught the whole gist of the women's movement, which was transpiring during the 60s. And she says her fall was the fall from man to God. Not the fall from grace, but the fall to grace. And the devil speaks, at the end the world is destroyed, but love lives on. So he's preaching a very good old message in very new dress. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away. My first visual, I don't think I've ever been asked that one before. Rise up so early in the morning. I can right now see my mother sitting at the piano, and I'm sitting on the floor with my brother, and I was maybe 3, and we were going through these cardboard things with the songs on them that my mother could play. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Oh, there was someone in the kitchen with Dinah. I certainly also remember up here, we had a pony, and I was trying to ride the pony and fell off. There was someone in the kitchen with Dinah. I was my brother's helper. He was 1.5 years, and we always thought just the same way. We were very close. And my parents gave him a sign with his name on it as if he was running a store. It said Harrison Parker, big sign like this, and he loved that. And I think they looked at me and said, well, you need a sign too. What would you like your sign to say? And I said, I's the helper that helps Harry. So that was what my sign was. I was commissioned to write an opera, and there wasn't much for me to go on of what they wanted, but I thought I better find a story that I can set. And I remember going to the bookstore on the Upper West Side and looking through and finding this little tiny separate volume, which was a story, a long short story by Eudora Welty, who was, of course, extremely well known as a writer. And but I thought, well, maybe I haven't ever seen this anywhere, so maybe it hasn't been set before. I didn't find out till later that it had been a play on Broadway. So it took me a year. And so I finally got that done, and I sent it down to her, and she wrote back and said, of course I have to give you permission, because there's not a word in here that isn't mine.
I got a great big house standing empty.
So then it took me another couple of years to write the opera.
And my father stood a baker.
But it was a story about life in a small southern town in about 1930, with whites and blacks, and the moneyed part of town, the people that remain, are Edna Earle, who tells the story. She's a woman in her 60s, and she's talking about her uncle, Daniel, who is younger than she is, the way some southern families are. And Uncle Daniel is a a natural. He's not mentally ill or anything. He just has never grown up. And he's very polished looking. He's just fine and carries on a conversation, but he never learned about money and he never learned about women. And the story is the story of his disastrous collision with both. It's full of wonderful, subtle humor. This is Alice's bread, the bread I invented.
And how is it different from any other bread?
This was early 60s. Julia Child's book about French cooking came out. She had about 40 pages about how to make a loaf of French bread. And it was so complicated. And she said, you can't do it anyways in this country because the flour isn't right and the water isn't right and the yeast isn't right and the salt isn't right. So she has all these ways of compensating. And I thought, if that's all you need, that's what I'm going to do. So I put a quart of water and I put 12 cups of flour and a couple of tablespoons of salt and, what's missing? Just the plain bread flour, unbleached. And that's what it is. It's just the simplest.
And voila.
Yeah, voila. So you can use it for anything. And it tastes delicious. It tastes different, each person that makes it. My daughter, Liza, made this one.
And hymns of glory sing, Jehovah.
Yes, I've been teaching for years. I sometimes describe what I'm doing as somebody sitting on a three-legged stool, and I'm a composer and a conductor and a teacher. And I think the fact that I've been teaching since the very beginning has made me maybe too verbal about process in both of those other fields.
Watery worlds are all his own.
What they learned in school about composition is theoretical ideas, not the craft. And I find that I have to start everybody back at the beginning. I did this years ago in my teaching. I learned to do this, and now it's exactly what I do, is start back at the very beginning with what happens when we open our mouths to sing. What are we really communicating? Are we communicating notes and rhythms? Well, yes, those are the vehicle, but it's not the idea. Are we communicating words? Yes, but very often the words get swallowed up in the notes and the rhythms so that we're not thinking about what the words mean or how we're speaking them as we sing them. They get jammed into the notes. And when people perform, they are so concerned with getting it exactly right with what it is on the page, they don't stop to think that the page is a perversion itself of the sound, because the page doesn't have any sound. There's no sound there. There's nothing that makes a sound in my ear. So that means that any sound that I'm going to draw off of this page, I bring to it. So the way everybody looks at a page of music is different because we are all different. We all hear differently. So they have all of these notes to deal with. They want to write in 4 parts because soprano, alto, tenor, bass. It's as if that came down along with the 10 Commandments. There shall be sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses. It doesn't at all. It starts with one human throat.
Words this time, first verse. Come sound his praise abroad.
So I'm teaching song, I'm teaching melody, I'm teaching poetry, because the way you read the words is the way you sing the song. And if you read the words in a dull fashion, you're going to be singing the song in a dull fashion. And that's so much of what we hear from schools is dull, because they've learned the notes without the words, and then they jam the words into the notes. So you get, my country 'tis of the sweet land of... What are you singing about? You have no idea. You've been singing notes without it. I love that song as an example because the grammar is so complicated. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. It's like a German sentence with the verb at the very end. And we don't even think of it. So many of the Christmas carols have crazy mixed up grammar. And if we start to sing them as if we understood what that grammar was and want to make the meaning clear, all of a sudden you get perfectly beautiful phrased singing. You don't get this mechanical note, 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 note. But the way conducting, for instance, is taught is to try to make a woman into a man, and a man's upper body is totally different from a woman's. And you get women trying to get all this strength in their arms and everything else, and they look ridiculous because it's not coming from inside. I take my inspiration for that from Martha Graham, who says it all comes from here, which is also Chinese and martial arts, and Qigong, which I still do today. I practice that. And conducting basically is a dance, and it's the dance of your own body. And if you try to dance somebody else's dance, you're going to look ridiculous. And so most of the women who were trying to be conductors were trying to conduct like men. And if you look at it from the point of view of what's on the page, you're worried about 16th notes and quarter notes and whether you're doing it exactly right according to the page, but you totally miss that whole emotional thing that's underneath it. And I find it extremely difficult to do the music without the emotion. I think there is a certain amount of the practice of orchestral rehearsals and operatic rehearsals and stuff that kind of has to do that in order to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing at the same time. But in my own work, I cannot look at my own music and perform what is on the page, because the page is a symbol to me of what is behind it, and I'm always going to do what's behind it. Amen. Go in peace. Keep singing.
Went yodeling on the mountain so high, when along came an avalanche interrupting his cry.
You guys sound terrific together.
Well, thanks. We've had a lot of practice singing together.
You've been doing this for a while, right?
Yes, we used to always sing at bedtime, and we would also sing in the car when we were driving from New York up to Massachusetts. It was like a 4-hour trip when I was little. So towards the end, when we were all very tired of being in the car, the singing would start, and we would get into songs, all the folk songs and rounds. I learned how to sing rounds, I think, driving in the car.
Do you think that you're the closest to your mother when you sing with her?
I think you could say that. It's a very special thing to sing together. I think singing with anybody brings you closer.
Oleakakia, oleakaku, shh, grr. Oleakakia, oleakaku, shh, grr. Oleakakia.
The day that Martin Luther King was killed, I was at home in my apartment in New York, surrounded by children and all the daily life things. And it was just horrifying. And the next thing that happened was a phone call saying, "We want a piece, we want to sing a piece 1 year from today. We want you to write it." So I started right away. It was wonderful for me because it gave me a place to focus right away. So I got out. I had several collections of Dr. King's writings, but I got everything that I could put my hands on, and I read and I read and I read for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. I couldn't find a single phrase that I wanted to set out of all of the things that he had written and the things that he had said. He's two different things. He's the white part of me and the black part of him that seem to be, that collide and need each other.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now. Because I've been to the mountaintop, I won't mind. Like anybody, I would like to have a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to that promised land.
He said, I've been to the mountaintop. I just want to do God's will. I want you to know that we as a people will get to the promised land. So the verse from the Bible that I chose for the baritone solo after that is, "Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will tell us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths."
And he will tell us of his ways.
I found this wonderful spiritual in a book that I had used all the time, one of my basic ones, but you don't see things until you're looking for them. You know, you can turn the pages over and over and never even notice a small one that's down in the corner, and I found this one. It starts, "Way up on the mountain." And the response from the chorus is, "Lord, mountain top, Lord, I heard God talking, Lord, chillin', a talk of home, Lord." The perfect response to that. Mountaintop, I heard that. So I knew my friend Seth McCoy, black tenor, had been a post office delivery person in Cleveland when somebody found him and got him out with his gorgeous tenor voice. And I start with a forte high A for tenor, usually what you have to work up for. I thought he was the only one in the world could do it. I find that all tenors love a song that starts with a forte high A. But anyway, so he does it. So you've had this very slow, low, contemplative piece about people walking in the way of the Lord, just scale steps going up and down. And then out of nowhere comes this tenor voice.
Way upon the mountain, mountain top, I heard God talking, chillin', a talk of home.
I decided early on, I can only write for a perceived need. I cannot write a piece for somebody's concert. I don't see any need for a concert. For a school, there's a need. For a church, there's a need. For a community group, there's a need. I want to know that my piece is going to be performed at a place where it is needed and appreciated, that it's not just sitting out in the ether somewhere. All of Bach's music, most of the music that the people we love was written for need. That was what they lived on. And they weren't paid by the composition, they were paid for producing the concert that the music was at. so that they were not just composing in an ivory corner, they were rehearsing and collecting people together to rehearse, to be the choir or the orchestra, and working with it. And it all got so abstract by the end of the 19th century, where the composer, as a separate being, came into being. Okay, I know Sure, there's a muse, but it's there for finding. It's a muse that dwells very much in craft. It doesn't just come to you, and a whole lot of people write music as if it did. But the craft as of a person who makes a perfectly beautiful table, because they choose good wood and they handle it with care and know how to sand it and cut it and finish it, put it together. I felt always as if I was at my best when I was with Tommy. He was always courteous and calm and kind and fun to be with. And I didn't recognize for a long time how much I really liked being with him. And it was that gradual realization, not a falling in love at the moment, but a gradual realization that this is who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with.
I got the key to the kingdom. I got the key. Oh, yes, I have it now.
We both came to New York in the same year, but very separately, to work with Robert Shaw. I was going to be his student at Juilliard, and Tom was a baritone, a wonderful voice, and was accepted right away into the inner circle of singers who did all of the things that worked with Shaw. They had the first integrated choirs that sang in the South and traveled in the South, and they would not stay in a hotel unless the black singers could stay there as well. They were really groundbreaking in a lot of ways. It was lovely. We only had 21 years, but they were packed full of activity and drama and 5 wonderful children, and I learned so much from him.
I got a key to the kingdom, and the world can't do me no harm.
I was in high school. I was a junior in high school in December 41. And we were listening to the Boston Symphony on the radio at home, and then the announcement came in the middle of that program.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, by air. President Roosevelt has just announced.
And then right away, some of the boys from my high school, the senior boys, left. And within a year, one of them had been killed. And then everything changed around the town, though I don't have a clear memory really of what it was like before, but I remember very clearly all of the rationing and the gasoline rationing, so we didn't go for drives in the car anymore, and the food rationings. We had in the middle of the family table a sugar bowl that held 2 pounds of sugar, and that had been in my father's family in World War I. And that was then, and that now in World War II, 2 pounds was your ration for, I forget how long, a week or 2 weeks, something like that. And that was all the sugar. So when you took a spoonful or a half a cup out of that, you realized that what was left had to last you for the rest of that time. I've always loved Emily Dickinson, and it's become an obsession as I've gotten older. I would much rather set her poems than almost anybody else's, because so much is suggested there. So I began to feel this deepening kinship with her. Not that she was retreating from the world, she was very much part of it. She loved her time at college, and she came home because her father insisted that she come home. And then she stayed at home, but she protected her own time and her own work. Her father always made fun of her poetry. My father didn't make fun of my music. He was always very, very accepting of it, but he didn't understand it. Emily's and my situations were very similar in some ways and very different in others, but certainly we're shaped by this climate. We're shaped by this very rugged countryside, the granite and the hills. We're shaped by something in the New England soul that seems to be concerned with big questions. Life and death and love and suffering. Joy and sorrow. Boy, are they mixed. I think it's because they're two sides of the same coin. One defines the other. And she knows this so well, and it's exactly what I'm playing with in my music. So that when I'm memorizing one of her poems and working with it over a period of weeks or months, I begin to see more and more clearly, to relate myself more and more clearly to the shape of that poem. I want to feel as if I know it so well that I'm starting at the same point that Emily started at. Of course, impossible.
Are you still optimistic after all these years?
Oh, there's no way I can be anything else. Every new baby that's born is a new possibility, and they have it new in front of them. I don't think there really is such a thing as progress, or at least we've never found moral progress. We've found progress in all kinds of material things, but not with things that matter. All over the world, most people are just striving to find a place to sleep that night or enough to feed their families, trying to stay together. And our inhumanity towards other human beings is just incredible. And our selfishness in this society, because we have too much. So I'm afraid there has to be a real reckoning coming, a real revolution or something like that. And I'm just incredibly fortunate to be living at a time where here I am. I've been retired for over 20 years, or I don't retire because I'm self-employed, but I've been living up here where I would rather be than anywhere else in the world, and able to do what I absolutely love, and still people want to come to me to work. And I just feel so fortunate. I still can write, not as much as I had been doing, but still. And I've just have had a most fortunate life.
Wow, welcome. It is so great to have this chance to talk with you, Alice and Eduardo. Every time I view the movie, I hear something new, and it inspires me a little bit more right now. So I have a few questions. And the first one is, Alice, the movie starts with you being asked, about singing and why do we sing? And I'm wondering, Eduardo and Alice, how you feel that the film answers that question.
Ladies first.
It certainly shows that I've based my whole life on it, and it felt like accidental to me, except that it obviously I think was meant to be. I had this wonderful experience of growing up in a singing family and lots of encouragement for my own development as a musician. And then the meeting with Shaw after college, which zoomed me in on singing rather than making that equal with instrumental or something rather. I had been very much a keyboard person before that. And that would really set the rest of my life, of course, for that. Eduardo?
I think that it's very interesting. One of the things that I've learned in this process and of doing the film and spending time with Alice is that you can live and sing, and you can sing through life. So it seems to be a difference there. There are those who just sing like I do in the shower, and there is those who go through life singing. There, in a way, it is a connection with a bird, and the poetic idea that the bird sings through life, and it only stops singing when it's no longer there. But it's a life of singer. It's a consecration, and I think that is something to admire and to envy
and emulate, I hope.
Absolutely. Eduardo, how much about singing and ensemble singing together, choral singing, did you know about before you made this movie? And what struck you most about Alice's relationship to her craft, and how might that inform your own craft as a filmmaker?
I had an early connection with choral singing because my father had a record label called Qualiton in Latin America and in Hungary, and most of the recordings were of choral groups, and so I grew up in these churches and sites and theaters where they were recording, which was very primitive recording, 1964, 65, 67. And then when I was 14 or 15 years old, I briefly passed through a choral ensemble for about a summer of my life, but that was it. So it was a way of, at a personal level, it meant to me rejoining with that lost part of my childhood, I think.
The movie highlights 4 pieces, Songs for Eve, The Ponder Heart, A Sermon from the Mountain, and Heavenly Hurt. Alice, what do these pieces reveal about your compositional style, and is there a common thread between the 4 of them?
I think the common thread is absolutely the texts that the works are based on. The finding the music that is in the words already is exactly what my search is at the beginning. Memorizing the text, even if you say The Ponder Heart, it's a whole opera. I have to have all those words in my head for that I can call them forth at any time. Hear those different voices of the characters in the opera speaking. It's never a question of notes and rhythms. It's a question of human speech and how I can translate that into musical sound. And there's a marvelous difference that happens when you add the musical sound to speech. And it's a line that I've often tried to define and never can. If I just intone now instead of speaking, it's very different from just speaking. But what is the difference? There's a pitch, but the rhythmic parts all stay the same and the accents. But there's something about that act of changing to singing from speaking that I think activates a different part of my brain. And it's an intuitive part of the brain, and that's what reaches out to the listener and awakes the intuitive in the listener. And that's the reason that music can be so moving to us, because it's really playing on our emotions, our inner selves, rather than our outer selves.
Eduardo, you said a couple of times that you had so much content for this. You filmed you have so many gems of film that you had to cut and put together to make only 30 minutes. And I'm wondering what influenced you to choose to highlight these 4 pieces?
The need to keep it under at about 30 minutes has to do with the ability of academics to show the film in a classroom and be able to partially discuss it. I have made over 60 films, and the problem is that when you go over, and I made 90-minute films, 102-minute films, is that then it's very difficult. You have to end up breaking them in three, and because the music of Alice will live and be perpetuated in the classroom eventually. And that is important to produce, in my mind, was to produce a piece that could be served as a tool for teachers to give us assignment, homework, to watch and review later. But to keep it in 30 minutes was a magic number. Also, public television is divided into slots, a 60-minute or a 30-minute. And having to choose, we went with the 30 minutes.
Right. And the four pieces, now when you explain it that way, to me, I can imagine why you chose these four pieces, but was there something particular that had you focus on these four, or was that decided even before you all started filming?
No, it was not decided. It was, first I had to get all the CDs and listen to it. There was a common, there were several premises. One was New England, the past, a certain way of life, and the civil rights movement, which fits into all of that at the same time, most of it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. One thing that really struck me when I watched it is the wintry New England setting. It almost feels like another subject in the film, another character. And so, Alice, it's very clear that your relationship to where you live is a central part of your life. And I was fascinated with your feeling of kinship to another very famous New England woman, Emily Dickinson. Could you talk about how your New England upbringing and living there for so long has shaped your work?
It's very true. Being born there and growing up, and Emily was just over the hills, just 40 miles from where I live. But there is a sense there of the seasons and the landscape are very much with you. This is no place that's placid, as I might think of a South Sea Island life where it's always warm and always pleasant, and that of course is a dream. But New England keeps you moving all the time. The seasons are short and sharp. Winter is cold and summer can be hot. Spring and fall are just gorgeous, except spring is very short. It just is squeezed in. Fall is opulent. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a lot to do with it too, this sense of fall as fulfillment, as harvest, and also of looking forward to winter and looking back much more than looking ahead. So there's those qualities, and certainly we find that in Emily's poetry. Those wonderful, wonderful poems about the seasons and about fall. The other thing about New England is this whiteness that you talk about, this sense of restraint, of holding back, of things going on under the surface that are not right on top. And that's certainly true of Emily's poetry. It's certainly true of the New England philosophers, the inward nature of their thinking that isn't concerned a lot with outward deeds, much more of inward thought. If I contrast Walt Whitman with Emily Dickinson, you see Whitman as a huge, broad embodiment of this other, a totally different poetic kind of imagination, equally American. But Emily is the crystallization of that New England reserve, quietness, but smoldering inside with ideas and commitments.
Wow. Yeah, that that sums it up. Eduardo, what did you think about traipsing around New England in the winter?
I knew it was winter. It had to be winter. First, it's one of my favorite seasons. I love the white and the way that light reflects on the white in overcast, under overcast skies. Also, it seems like there's 4 seasons in the life of an individual, and we're no spring chickens anymore. And I think that winter better represents the color of Alice's hair. I was trying to portray the winter of the life and the winter of the terrain at the same time, which I think it came out really well. And I think that also some of the most creative mementos in the intellectual life of this country happen in winter.
Well, I will remember that. That's an interesting thought. I think you're right. So this documentary includes many scenes of people singing together. And so obviously it was filmed when that was possible, and it's not possible in the same way right now. But Alice, I wonder, how does it feel for you to watch that as from the perspective we're in now, as we wait for vaccines and for COVID to go away? And what would you say to people who are keenly feeling the loss of not being able to sing together right now?
Oh, I feel it very much myself, and I'm surrounded. All the people in my church choir just are longing to get together, and they have solved it somewhat. We have an outdoor service once a month where we're well separated and masked and everything else, and we hum into our masks, and that gives a little relief. Mm-hmm. But I have with me very much in my mind the image of a New England farm family 200 years ago, 300 years ago, where there's no electricity, there's no telephone, there's none of our modern devices that take us out of where we are. They really are stuck where they are with the people in their particular pod. Mm-hmm. And we have to go back to learning to be happy to sing with the people that are right there, not always need the accompaniment or the other trained voices or the great music to hold. And that still exists, but what we can do is go back and discover the music that we can make ourselves individually. We can sing for our own enjoyment and our own education. And we can also sing with the one other person that shares the space with us or the family. Singing with children as a family, I think, is one of the most important things anybody can do. And we have time for that now, except for the electronic devices. If they're always on, we don't do this exploration of sound and making sound ourselves in small groups. We have to get used to being satisfied, not only satisfied, but fulfilled by the music that we can make ourselves, whether it's with voices or instruments, whether it's with toddlers or primary school kids or high school kids. There's always a way to make song, but we have to get out of this feeling that we need all this other equipment around us in order to do it. Mm-hmm. To learn to listen to what goes on when we sing well ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's well, I hope there's opportunity for that now for parents to be singing with their kids. I hope they're doing that. That is sort of a silver lining in a way of all this. But I would like each of you to share your favorite moment from the film and why it is your favorite moment. How did it resonate with you? Eduardo, do you want to start?
Yes, it is a revealing moment, not necessarily wahoo moment, but it has to do with what Alice was just talking about now. I took several shots of Alice after the service in church, and people were lining up to give her a hug. I felt kind of conflicted because I was holding the camera and I also wanted to give it a hug, but I was filming how other people were giving her a hug. And I thought in my mind, oh God, this is gonna edit so well because I'm just going to do it like jump cuts, like hugs that are interrupted, 1, 2, 3, 4, and go with the music, with the tempo of one of her compositions. And then I showed it to Alice, and Alice says, oh, people are gonna be so sad when they see this because they can't hug anymore. And it just basically threw me in a state of depression for 48 hours because she was right. And it was such a beautiful scene. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about the others, how others will perceive this. Mm-hmm. And I remember a brief exchange we had in which I said, well, maybe just let's leave 1 or 2 hugs so people are reminded, just in case, that once upon a time, we touched, we embraced.
Oh, yeah, that's poignant. Alice, what about you?
Oh, the one that touched me the most was the one of my singing with my daughter, Molly, and we were singing dumb songs like I've been working on the railroad and
the bear.
That one about the bear is just lovely. But we were both moving back into childhood. They'd been at church camp in the summer and learned these ridiculous songs and brought them home. And it takes us back to that. But I just loved the way Eduardo had filmed the 2 faces against each other, and that we were singing 2 parts. And it's just what I was talking about before. The music that we can make at home that is wholly satisfying without fulfilling any grand designs of the art of music or the art of choral singing or anything else like that. Just plain having fun and using music and those old songs as a tool for celebrating being together.
And it struck me as such a celebration of family and what you've handed down to your kids, because she remembered all the words. That
I get mixed up.
And hand motions.
Doing all of that together, but that just makes it fun. And then when you make the mistake, everyone always laughs. It's not an occasion for scolding. It's oh shoot, I missed it again.
Very special.
Yeah.
And also, Alice, in the film, you say that you prefer to write for a need, to compose knowing that there is going to be a use for the piece, and you can see what that use is going to be. You also end the movie talking about the need for a reckoning. I think you even used the word revolution. And you recently composed a piece called On the Common Ground. And we are so honored tonight to be able to premiere in this premiere in just a few minutes, your new piece, On the Common Ground. And I know you wrote this particular piece without a commission, which is unusual for you. Could you talk about this piece and the need it addresses?
It's very much the result of listening to the television and radio reports of what goes on every day. And the level of discourse in this country. When I think of say, the Continental Congress meeting together and speaking together, there were wildly different points of view, but they were all using the English language well and with emotion and with feeling. And then we ended up with these incredible documents written in the most beautiful English. So that there was plenty of turmoil, but there was always this huge common purpose of establishing a country, bringing together these 13 original colonies, and that they had to be able to keep talking. I also have a lovely memory of reading about Ben Franklin in his old age, walking down the street to the Continental Congress or the Congress in the afternoons and listening to their debating. And there would be about a half an hour later left in the day. And he would say, all right, gentlemen, you've had all your fun of talking. Now let's get one thing done today. And that was what we so much needed. We needed a school teacher for Congress to get them in line and thinking about all of the things we have in common, all the things that need doing that we don't do because we're so busy airing our differences. And it seems to me just tragic that we cannot be exploring politely and with respect and affection for one another. We can't be exploring those and getting something done every day, the way any housewife has to get something done in order to get the meal on the table or the garbage out the door. You know, the country lives on those things, and we just are so embroiled in stamping on other people and in airing our dissatisfactions that we spend no time at all quietly resolving the very real problems that are all around us. So it was in response to that. And as you say, I never write without a commission, but I just kept feeling this phrase "on the common ground" kept coming back to me. And I finally just laid out all of these things where we need to come together. We need to come together over black and white, and we need to come together over rich and poor. And most of all, we need respect for one another as individuals. And so that was what the song came from. And it was very spontaneous, very quick. I always find that the best pieces are the ones that come with the least of the rational mind intruding on the creative process. Let it just spring from inside. So it was fun to write. And when I finished it, I had no idea what to do with it, because usually I'm sending it someplace for the premiere. So I sent it to my friend Philip Brunel, who is a hive of ideas, and he knew right away what to do with it, which included bringing it to you, which was a wonderful thought. So it's lovely for me to have it premiered. I'm
so glad you did. You know, it also it points to New England, because I know at least I think Philip said this to me, that you were thinking about the commons in a town, that the commons was a place where people gathered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And worked together. It was a plot of land put aside so that everybody could bring their cattle or sheep or whatever in from their pastures outside of the town and bring them together in the center where that they would be safe overnight. And then they could go back out the next day. So it was not only that they could gather there, but they worked together for the common good.
I think we're going to have to relearn that. So sad. But the happy thing is, I am now really pleased that we are able to share the premiere performance of On the Common Ground. It was recorded on Sunday, September 27th at Plymouth Congregational Church in Minneapolis. And this performance features Maria Jetty, the soloist, with Jenny French, Lisa Drew, Dan Dressen, and James Bone. Special thanks to each of the wonderful vocalists, and to, of course, our dear Philip Brunel, the organist choir master at Plymouth Church, as well as the artistic director and founder of Vocal Essence. Thank you for sharing it with us tonight. So we are pleased to present On the Common Ground.
Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord.
Help me, Lord. Help me, Lord.
Help me find the common ground.
Find the common ground. Yes, the common ground.
Between the high and the low.
High and low.
Between the poor and the rich.
Poor and rich.
Between the old and the young.
Old and young.
Between the black
Black
and the white.
and the white. Help me find the common ground.
Find
The common ground. Yes, the common ground.
Alice, that was wonderful. I am so glad that I was able to share it with everyone tonight, and that you decided to take some action by writing this piece and inspiring us all to work towards finding the common ground, you know, in this really contentious time. Alice and a board member, Mark Lawson from ECS Publishing Group, have partnered to make On the Common Ground available for a nominal charge of $1.50 per copy, and a percentage of the proceeds will go to the new Alice Parker Fund that I talked about at the beginning. You can use the link in the video description to purchase the piece or learn more about it. So I guess that we've come to the end of our evening. Alice and Eduardo, thank you so much for taking this time with us to give us a little more insight into this beautiful documentary film. Thanks to all of you who are watching. I hope you could imagine the red carpet for this premiere. I would like to offer special thanks to Heritage Film Project, Melodious Accord, and of course, Eduardo Montes-Bradley for the opportunity to present the premiere of Alice at Home with Alice Parker tonight. Thank you, Mark Lawson and ECS Publishing Group. And don't forget, you can purchase copies of Alice's new piece using the link in the video description here. And thank you again to Philip Brunel and the quintet from Plymouth Congregational Church in Minneapolis for the performance. Don't forget to consider a gift to the Alice Parker Fund tonight. Texting, you can do it by Give by Text, and that information is also in the video description below. You can text chorus to 56512, the word chorus, or by clicking that link in the video description. Finally, thank you, Alice Parker, for your work, for your inspiration, and for your indomitable spirit, which is certainly important for me and something I hope I will live up to someday.
Bless you.
And on behalf of the Chorus America staff and board, thank you again to everyone watching at home, and thank you for joining us. Please stay safe and keep singing.